You ever wonder if a single, deeply held belief could actually spark a revolution? Well, that's pretty much what happened with a small community of Quakers back in 18th century New York. They called themselves the Nine Partners, and their spiritual convictions led them to create some truly radical social innovations, ideas that would ripple right across America. So let's dive into how they pulled it off. And it all really starts right here. This is the Nine Partners Meeting House, built way back in 1780. And just look at it. It's made of brick. Now, that might not sound like a big deal to us, but in an era of simple wooden buildings, using brick was a huge statement. It was expensive, it was permanent, and it sent a crystal clear message. This community wasn't going anywhere. They were prosperous, they were influential, and they were here to stay. Okay, so right away, we've got this fascinating puzzle. Quakers are known for their principle of plainness, simplicity. So how on earth does a community dedicated to a simple life end up building something this impressive? And maybe more importantly, how did they turn this building into a launchpad for changing the entire nation? Well, the answer lies in this really deep moral contradiction that was sitting right at the heart of their community. Their most sacred beliefs were on a direct collision course with the harsh realities of life in 18th century New York. You've got to remember, back in the late 1700s, New York had the largest enslaved population of any northern state. And right there in Dutchess County, where Nine Partners was, about 10% of all families were slaveholders. And here's the hard truth. Some of the most prominent Quaker families, despite their beliefs, were part of this system. They held people in bondage. For a Quaker, this wasn't just a problem, it was a full-blown spiritual crisis. Their entire faith, from their founder George Fox, is built on this one core idea, that there is that of God in everyone. Just think about that for a second. If every single person has a divine spark, an inner light, how can you possibly justify owning them? The simple answer is, you can't. And they knew it. And here's what makes this story so powerful. This belief, this inner light doctrine, it wasn't just some passive idea they talked about once a week. For the Quakers at Nine Partners, it became an active engine, a tool they used for some intense self-examination and eventually some really radical change. So what is this inner light? Basically, it's the idea that every single person has their own direct connection to the divine. No need for priests or pastors, because everyone has that link. This idea just completely flattened the spiritual landscape, and it made social inequality, especially slavery, a direct theological problem. It was an offense not just against another person, but against the divine spark within that person. And they didn't just sit around feeling bad about it, they actually built a system to deal with it. It was this incredibly structured process for holding themselves accountable. First, they had something called queries. These were a series of really tough, reflective questions that acted like a moral audit for the whole community. Second, they wrote everything down, creating this meticulous paper trail of their ethical struggles. And third, if a member was, falling short, the community would put them under communal care to help guide them back. All of this, the belief, the crisis, the system, it was all building towards their first truly groundbreaking solution. Using this intense process, the Nine Partners community did something absolutely extraordinary. They made freeing enslaved people no longer a personal choice, but a non-negotiable requirement to even be a Quaker. And just look at how quickly they acted. In 1775, their regional body says all members must free anyone they have enslaved. Just 1 year later, Nine Partners has a committee on the ground making sure it happens. By 1787, and get this is a full 22 years before New York State would even begin a gradual abolition process, they could officially say that not a single one of their members held slaves. They didn't wait for the law. They made their own. Higher moral law. But they didn't stop there. Not even close. After tackling the issue of slavery within their own ranks, they turned that same principle of equality toward another radical idea: education. So, in 1796, they took that core belief in equal spiritual worth and applied it to a totally new frontier. They founded the Nine Partners Boarding School. And this wasn't just some local schoolhouse. It was the first successful coeducational boarding school in the entire United States. Think about that for a second. Right up the hill from their meeting house, they built this institution, designed from the ground up to pass their values on to the next generation. It became a cornerstone of the community, where all the ideas they discussed down at the meeting house were actually put into practice. And what they taught there was revolutionary for the time. Boys and girls studied the same demanding subjects: arithmetic, grammar, geography. They were treated as intellectual equals.
Now, was it perfect by our standards today? No, of course not. The practical education was still split along traditional gender lines, and we know female teachers were paid a lot less than the men. But in the 1790s, the very idea of educating boys and girls together under one roof was a monumental step forward.
And hey, if you want to see just how deep this commitment to equality ran, you don't even need to look at the school. Just look at the blueprint for the meeting house itself. See this double symmetry plan? It shows two perfectly equal-sized rooms, one for men's meetings and one for women's, separated by a wall they could actually move. They literally built equality into their architecture, ensuring women had the physical space and the power to run their own affairs. So what does this all add up to? Well, the impact of this small community didn't just stay in upstate New York. The values they hammered out, especially in that school, would echo down through generations and help shape the entire course of American history. I mean, the school produced some of the most important reformers of the 19th century. Lucretia Mott, a total powerhouse of the abolitionist and women's rights movements, was both a student and a teacher here. Another student was a man named Daniel Anthony who would raise his daughter, yep, that Susan B. Anthony, on the Quaker principles he learned at Nine Partners. The seeds of Seneca Falls were literally planted right here. And these are some of the people who made it happen. Jacob and Deborah Willits, two of the school's most beloved teachers. They didn't just teach equality from a book, they lived it. Their home was a known sanctuary for freedom seekers on the Underground Railroad, directly connecting the school's philosophy to the life-or-death struggle for freedom. This wasn't just a local thing. As historian Fergus Bordewich put it, the institutions at Nine Partners, the meeting house and the school were, and I quote, the most important single abolitionist institution in the Valley and one of the most important in the country. So we're left with this really powerful idea. The story of Nine Partners is this incredible testament to what can happen when a small group of people decides to take its beliefs deadly seriously, not as abstract ideas, but as real principles to be lived, to be enforced, and to be built into the very walls of their community. It just goes to show how one disciplined group in one small place can start a ripple that ends up changing the world.